Hello, everyone. My name's Rachel McLeod, and I want to welcome you to this presentation, 5 Steps for Women to Overcome Anxiety Without Having to Spend the Next 2 years in Therapy. And I wanted to welcome you with my camera on before we dive in and get started. I'm going to be focusing and staying on course for the next 45 minutes or so. And if you've followed me on Facebook or YouTube, you know that this is really important because I love to tell stories. I'm very passionate about this. I love to tell healing stories. I love to dramatize brain function so it's easy to understand. And I can easily turn 45 minutes into 90 minutes, no problem. But we can do that another time. But today I really have a great presentation planned and I want to share that with you now. So let's go ahead and get started. What is anxiety? If you're on this presentation, you already know, but let's get on the same page here. Nearly 30% of all adults suffer from anxiety symptoms. It's a common burden. 40 million adults in the United States alone suffer from anxiety, almost 26 million of whom are women. And anxiety affects us all differently. More than 1 in 5 women are reported to suffer from this, and it can take a huge toll on us as its effects can reach into our careers, relationships, physical health, self-image, finances, and much, much more. Here's what we're experiencing: difficulty falling asleep, mind going blank, irritability, outbursts of anger. Yes, that's an anxiety symptom too. Panic attacks, shortness of breath, uncontrollable worry, mental fixation, feelings of impending danger or doom, nervousness and restlessness, lack of concentration, racing thoughts, trembling, nausea, increased heart rate. All of these are symptoms of anxiety, whether they're showing up in the body, whether they're showing up in our thoughts, or in how we're thinking and how we are interacting with the world around us. And this is what they lead to: overwhelm, burnout, self-doubt, destructive interactions, feelings of numbness, disconnectedness, loneliness, oppressive shame or guilt, unhealthy boundaries, compassion fatigue, suicidal thoughts, self-abandonment, self-sabotage, shrinking back from goals, people-pleasing, obsessions and compulsions, loss of self-confidence, withdrawal, and isolation. No wonder we're suffering. Often we don't even know why these areas of our lives aren't unfolding the way we envisioned. We blame ourselves when really it's the anxiety. For many of us, anxiety is the destructive force in our life. And anxiety can be overcome. This problem is not unbeatable. It actually resolves beautifully. Even if you've already spent decades in therapy, tried tons of self-help books, have been meditating for years, and you're still suffering with anxiety now. I'll give you an example. This client I'll call Ella is a life coach who suffered from symptoms of anxiety. Despite having a supportive family and being highly skilled in her work, her symptoms prevented her from really finding success. Her anxiety often got in the way throughout her day, and soon, even things she normally had no problem doing started to feel difficult to accomplish. When I interviewed her, here are some of the things she said. My anxiety was the primary thing coming up in my life, and I would be wreaking havoc on my mind with destructive thoughts. I see this all the time. Has something like this happened to you? If it has, there's hope. I met Ella in 2019. She booked a call with me after hearing me talk on a podcast about eliminating anxiety symptoms. She had always believed she could, but every message she received from others was learn to cope and to expect to live with this problem for the rest of her life. And yet today, after taking the 5 steps I'm about to share, Ella is a successful coach for mothers. Her business became so successful, she managed to retire her husband within a year of overcoming her anxiety. We don't have to settle for coping. We can resolve our symptoms. We can overcome anxiety. We can heal. In fact, we're meant to overcome anxiety. It's how our brains are designed. And that's why we're here. You'll learn the brain's natural symptom resolution process. I'll show you a proven process for helping your brain to resolve anxiety at the root. I'll show you how to expand that process into a step-by-step path for kicking anxiety out of each area of your life. This is for you if you're a mom who needs to overcome anxiety to show up fully and powerfully for her kids. If you're a creative who needs to resolve her anxiety so she's free to create. If you're a spiritual powerhouse who needs to shake off the anxiety to walk into her next level of expansion. Or if you're a woman whose path to success, connection, and fulfillment is hindered by anxiety. Let me tell you my story. I have the Make It Stop Anxiety solution because it's exactly what I needed for myself, my children, my marriage, and my life. So again, I'm Rachel McLeod. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a mental health therapist and an emotional wellness coach. I specialize in helping women do the brain work for resolving anxiety so they can enjoy their full life and reach their true potential. I have firsthand personal experience of what it's like to have a raging anxiety disorder and to do the work to resolve it. I began my career in mental health as a talk therapist, but I felt I was not getting my clients the results they deserved. Despite being willing and eager to help, I found that many of my clients were not improving using traditional talk therapy. After a year of work as a talk therapist, I quit. I spent my time focusing on my family and personal life. And then 3 years later, I found myself in another mental health crisis. This would be my third. The first two, I had no clue at those times that I was even in a mental health crisis. I know better now. But here in my third crisis, I was suffering devastating bouts of anxiety, which I would later discover were the result of complex childhood trauma. With the onset of my anxiety, my life began to crash. It began to affect my family. I couldn't solve problems or make decisions, and I felt so overwhelmed and confused. The anxiety was so encompassing, I didn't even know that it was the root of my problems. At some point in all of that, my husband suggested I get a mental health evaluation. So I went in and was evaluated by another therapist, and they diagnosed me with obsessive compulsive disorder. And the light bulbs just went off for me. Finally, it clicked. Because here I am intelligent and I can't solve my problems. I can get a degree, but I can't do this life thing, which was really confusing to me. But now, with that diagnosis in hand, I had a place to really start looking and trying to figure this whole thing out. Shortly after my diagnosis, I met a woman who was a practitioner of alternative healing methods. And from her, I learned my first fast-acting intervention. And I started using this intervention to break through and resolve the symptoms of my anxiety. At this time, I didn't even realize these kinds of interventions existed, but it was awesome. I first used this intervention to work through the insomnia I had developed. I had no idea what I was doing, but after about a minute of using this intervention, I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning and I was like, what else can I try this on? And I started using it anytime I felt upset, distressed, anytime I was having a symptom, and my life started getting better and better. But there was a problem. I had a whole disorder to unravel, and I was stuck just hacking away at the symptoms I was facing whenever they occurred. It's frustrating when you have this tool and the weeds just keep popping up, and that's right where I was. It was better than where I was even before that, but I was still feeling pretty powerless to the symptoms. I had no idea I needed to resolve the root issues underneath the symptoms. That I learned through a lot of trial and error. But finally, I was free, happy, and flourishing, and I began to help others work through this too. Soon, my clients were also resolving not just the symptoms, but the entire disorder. This was huge, and my clients were thrilled. As I continued to practice and work with more and more clients, I streamlined what I learned, and I was consistently helping my clients overcome their disorders. From there, I began to ask myself, can we do this faster? I experimented with training my new clients in the interventions and strategies, and then giving them homework in addition to working together in our sessions. And the speed of their transformation skyrocketed. I cracked the code. It was through these discoveries that I learned 3 secrets to fast, effective, and most importantly, lasting healing. So we're going to make it so that they're not secrets. And here they go. This is what I learned. The first secret, our brains are equipped to resolve anxiety. I thought it was the interventions, and the interventions are awesome. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but really brains are amazing. Our brains have a built-in process through which they resolve anxiety. This process is natural, consistent, and reliable, and therefore it can be leveraged to achieve the healing we require. The second secret is that symptoms are transformational opportunities. The experience of anxiety is a sign that the brain is aware something is wrong and it's actively trying to reach a state of wellness. The third secret is working with the brain gets us faster results. By providing the brain with the right support, we empower it to complete its natural healing process. Symptoms resolve and the brain's wellness goals are achieved. That's how symptoms stop. Let me share a good real-life example of these 3 secrets, or 3 lessons now, in action. One of my clients, Eliza, is a talented musician who was stuck in a rut, unable to progress in her goals due to anxiety and the feeling that she was stuck in survival mode. At her lowest, she was procrastinating, stress eating, and battling negative self-talk. She was at the point where anytime she told her friends or family, "I'm going to release an album," they would respond with either doubt or humor. Today, however, Eliza is a transformed woman. She successfully overcame the root causes of her anxiety. More importantly, she surprised and delighted all her friends and family by actually releasing her first album. The question is, how did she manage this? She used the following 5 steps. She overcame her anxiety in 8 weeks, and I had a front row seat to watch her full transformation. These 5 steps are exactly how we did it. I'm going to share these steps with you right now. Step 1, equip yourself with interventions. And I love this whole Ghostbusters theme because it really feels like you're being chased by some big bad things when you have anxiety, and it can be really scary. Remember Ghostbusters? Remember the confidence and the attitude they had when they were going in there to go handle some ghosts? They wouldn't have gone after Gozer with the same spunk without their proton packs. They needed their equipment. So think of anxiety as your Gozer, and this step is about getting you your proton packs. When you're equipped with those tools and you see that they work, then all of a sudden you're like, let's go do this. That's really the attitude we want you leaning into this with. That's why it's so important to get you equipped with some powerful interventions to start using them and experience your first few wins overcoming anxiety. Pretty soon you'll be like those Ghostbusters with the attitude of come at me symptoms. That's exactly how we want you positioned in this. That's why it's so important that you get equipped with some powerful interventions, start using them, and experience your first few wins overcoming anxiety. So why use interventions? I'm going to share the answer to this by showing you brain function in an easy to understand way. I want you to be able to really get why these interventions are so important. And once you see the brain function, you'll see the match perfectly. Because your brain has a beautiful process for resolving anxiety. However, sometimes it can get in its own way. When we encounter something that's stressful, we want our brain to get skillful, creative, or resourceful to address the stressor in a way that advances us. If you look at this diagram, you see this is here our brain is encountering something stressful. And if you imagine this is its journey, you do not want to see this in nerd language. It's just not nearly as cool. So stay with me on this. Imagine this red line isn't here, right? Because I'm going to talk about this in a moment. This dotted line is one of the pathways. Your brain's processing something stressful and it's coming here. If your brain can stay resourceful, creative during this process, it'll stay on the dots and it will come out here along this path and really address the stressor in a way that actually advances us. That's really what we want. However, when our stress levels reach a point of overwhelming distress, this line here eventually gets to a point where your survival system says, no, we're shutting this down. It's too much distress. We're going to fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn and get away from this distress. So out it goes into one of those modes. And so that's when we'll end up back here, only to begin this loop again. And I'll explain that in a moment. These survival states result in what we experience as anxiety. We don't choose this. This is how our survival system reacts to overwhelming distress. Our survival system will also decide when it's safe to come out of the survival state and return to a state of calm where healing and problem solving happens. What this also means is that the stressor that you encountered didn't get fully through your brain's healing process. And so our brain will try to get that stressor through its healing process later. As a matter of fact, our brain will never give up trying to complete its work with that stressor. Here's what that looks like using the diagram. Once we go out here into fight, flight, freeze, or faint, the brain will decide when it's calm and when we can come out of that. And then you'll go right back here into a state of calm. And then your brain will try to work on it again because it hasn't made it over here yet. So it's going to try to work on it again, but it encounters that same distress that it didn't get resolved the first time. And so it shifts back into the state and down and around. Here it goes, calming back in and trying again eventually. Each time our brain brings this stressor up to be processed, it will encounter that overwhelming distress, and the entire survival reaction begins all over again. This loop will continue for a lifetime in more complicated and complex ways, or until your brain is able to process that overwhelming distress. You can see here that it is in our best interest to help our brain successfully work through whatever it considers overwhelming distress and help it complete its healing process. The right tools work quickly to support the brain's ability to reduce the intensity of the overwhelming distress, which allows your brain to complete its healing and problem resolution process. This is how anxiety loops are broken and anxiety symptoms resolved. Okay, let me show you a little bit more about brain function. The brain interprets the distress we experience as pain, regardless of whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or relational pain. Pain is pain. So let me show you this equation that is a major principle in how I help people work with their brain. And that is no or low pain equals much gain. There's some saying out there that says no pain equals no gain. Not true in this work. It's the opposite. No pain equals much gain. Low pain equals much gain. High pain equals survival system reaction, shifting us into fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn. And that means overwhelming distress. No, thank you. We don't need that. So with all of that in mind, we can minimize pain or distress by using the interventions at any point along the cycle of an anxiety symptom, before, during, or after a symptom occurs. In this diagram, I love this here because it shows you that we can use interventions early, we can use them as often as we need, and we can avoid the survival state altogether. We can keep ourselves on that processing, healing, symptom resolution path and get up here and use whatever was stressing us to advance us instead of having to go here at all, or worse, go here and get back down into that loop. At any point, we can use an intervention to help our brain complete its healing process. So let me show you some examples of interventions that work to support the brain like we just discussed. These are specific interventions, and not all interventions will create the same impact. These are the ones that have worked the best for myself and my clients. There are other ones, and there's also some criteria we're looking for in an intervention. And as you learn more about brain function, you'll understand which interventions will work to help your brain complete its process. These are my 4 favorite: thought-filled therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, emotional freedom techniques, and energy medicine. They all work slightly different, but they each create a powerful effect. And with the right support and training, all 4 of these are very easy to learn how to use and apply safely and effectively to get very deep transformation. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. The first thing we do is take a symptom you're experiencing and trial several interventions until we find one or more that help your brain through its natural process. We'll know within seconds if these interventions work because the distress in the trial symptom reduces or resolves entirely. Once we have a fitting intervention or two, it's time to get this party started. So for step 1, the goal is to equip yourself with the right interventions that support your brain's natural ability to resolve symptoms of anxiety. Basic skills are all you need in the beginning. By the time you're done with this process, you'll have developed the advanced skills needed to provide your brain highly effective specialized support beyond the skills of most therapists. This brings us to step 2, locate your access points. A common term among some therapists, particularly EMDR therapists, is target, which refers to an issue in your life that must be processed or reprocessed to create a positive shift in how you and your brain respond to this issue in the future. And what I call an access point is a target that serves as our starting point. An access point leads to other more deep-seated targets in a sequence, giving us access to the pivotal root issue causing the access point in the first place. Using access points gives order and direction to symptom resolution, greatly speeding up the process compared to working with random targets, or what I call chasing symptoms around. Addressing symptoms as access points changes our relationship to them. Effective use of access points allows us to see symptoms as opportunities and important communication from the brain instead of as our brain attacking or betraying us. Access points are specific to you. They are often visible when specific triggering situations arise, and they offer clues we need to get us to the root layer of anxiety symptoms and not just stay on the surface. Here are some examples of access points. A gripping sensation in your stomach when you think of your to-do list. A sinking feeling after hearing someone yelling. Laying in bed worrying. Racing thoughts after making a mistake. Feeling irritable or on edge and unable to find calm. Panic in response to specific everyday tasks, like driving a car, public speaking, those sorts of things. Overspending. Mindless scrolling on social media. Feeling disconnected from yourself. Emotional eating. Feeling numb. Withdrawing from social activities, loved ones, and/or responsibilities. Each one of those are separate access points. Angry outbursts, avoiding situations that would be upsetting. Here's an example of what that looks like in practice. It's 3 a.m. and racing thoughts have you feeling anxious so you can't sleep. So you scroll through social media for a few hours and wake up exhausted and irritable the next morning. There are a couple of access points here, but we find that one access point in particular, racing thoughts, is where the cycle started. Using this access point, we have the potential to topple the entire cycle, and we know exactly where we want to start our work. Here's another example. You have an important meeting tomorrow, and you're sitting in front of your computer. You know you should be preparing for the meeting, but instead you're making trips to your kitchen fridge to snack. In this situation, there's also at least 2 access points: procrastination and emotional eating. Since the procrastination results in emotional eating, we can use the procrastination as the access point and resolve both the procrastination and an aspect of the emotional eating. To sum it up, access points give us a clear direction of where to start to create the most impact or transformation. They let us pull the weeds up by the root instead of continually hacking at their leaves. Focusing on access points empowers you to quickly reduce the number of symptoms and cut down the amount of coping required. Okay, so let's move on and talk about step 3. Get rid of symptoms. This is where the magic happens. You have your tools, you know how to find your access points, so it's time to get to work. We start with an access point and use interventions to work our way down to the root, resolving targets along the way. This allows us to support the brain to accomplish the symptom resolution work it has been unable to do on its own. With that symptom out of the way, we look for the next access point and continue the process again. Following this process, we help your brain resolve the symptoms showing up in your life. And so here is where we want to catch symptoms and dive deeper. While using interventions in the moment allows us to address our symptoms on the surface level, which is awesome. However, staying on this level just results in whacking away at the leaves of this tree. It's awesome. I'm not putting it down because yes, it's wonderful to be able to stop a symptom right there in the moment, but eventually we have to go deeper if we want to find the root. I'm going to talk to you about this using a metaphor because I think that this is the most specific way to help you think about this. Imagine a pearl. We know it's formed by layers surrounding something that irritates the oyster. No matter how much the oyster covers up that something, the fact remains the object is stuck inside it. The oyster cannot get complete relief by covering it up. Yes, the smooth coating makes it feel better in the short term, but as it adds layers, the pearl grows larger and larger, taking up more and more space inside. Only by removing the object that is the source of the irritation in the first place can the oyster finally achieve complete freedom from its pain. Our brains work the same way. The source of our irritation is unresolved emotional distress. inner conflict, or traumatic experiences. These can occur at any time, and the longer they stay unresolved, the more layers get added on. Like pearls, our symptoms are extremely valuable. As mentioned in previous steps, they give us massive amounts of information about ourselves and our experiences that we need in order to make the symptoms stop and create wellness. Ultimately, our goal is to get that pearl out. But the dive is different for every pearl we want to harvest. The strategies for harvesting the small ones near the shore are different from the ones needed for harvesting the real giants in the deep waters. Let's talk a bit more about diving deeper. So, the diving part of this is where we navigate brain function and the parts of the brain and track the symptoms to their root. Here, we learn to work with the conscious and subconscious mind, the body, and the survival system to take us through the layers to the root of the symptoms we want to resolve. The more skilled we become at this, the quicker and more effectively we're able to get to the root layer of our symptoms. And then let's talk about the harvesting component of this. We support the brain to process all the information we gathered about the symptom during the dive. We are harvesting all the information that the symptom is storing and finally getting it through the brain's healing process and into the part of the brain that hasn't ever been able to get that information before. Addressing and harvesting symptoms in the moment helps us accomplish a few things. The first is to give on-demand support for your brain in the moment when it needs it, to get out of the symptom quickly, to save you from a cycle of coping or spiraling downward, to put you back on track with your version of living well, and to make it easier to resolve the root issue when you eventually get to it. These are shallow dives requiring very little diving skills. The skills required for a deep dive involve gathering information from 4 parts of us and using that information to take you to the root of the problem. The 4 parts of us that we work with are the subconscious mind, the body, the survival system, and the conscious mind. These parts of us give us information and targets to process. These each have their own way of communicating what they know about any given issue or symptom, and they are always communicating. After all, they're experiencing it too. And these parts of us give us the information and targets that need to be resolved along the way from the access point down and into the root issue. During this 3rd step, we use basic to advanced skills. Harvesting symptoms in the deep. Addressing deeply rooted symptoms accomplishes a few things. It allows us to be proactive in dealing with anxiety. You do not need to be experiencing a symptom for this kind of dive. It allows us to choose the pace and intensity of the symptom we're working with so that we can keep intensity levels within the brain's processing capacity. Remember, no pain equals much gain. It also anchors us to thoroughly complete the deep harvesting process, allowing us to take breaks from the dive and pick up where we left off when we're ready or at our next opportunity. And resolving one root eliminates all the symptoms generated by that root. These deep dives require increasingly advanced skill sets, normally taught only to professionals. However, with the right guidance and practice, we can build and apply these skill sets safely and effectively so we are not limited to therapy sessions to support our brains and accomplish healing work. Let's take a look at this in practice. You wake up in the morning, it's a beautiful day, but you're already on edge. As you think of how this irritability plays out, you start to feel dread because you don't want to take out your irritability on your loved ones. You begin using an intervention to support your brain in processing the irritability and dread. After a few rounds of this, you notice your breathing starts to slow down and the tension drains out of your body. You feel ready to start your day. Later that evening, you decide that it's time for that morning irritability to go. So it's time for a deep dive. You track this morning irritability to the root by gathering information from your conscious and subconscious minds, your survival system, and your body, while applying an intervention to help your brain to locate and resolve the issue at the root. We know the root of this problem is resolved when the morning irritability is no longer showing up. As a bonus, any other symptoms generated by this one root are also resolved. To summarize, Step 3 is where your brain gets the support it needs to finally complete its process for resolving each of the symptoms showing up in your life. This is about getting your brain the resolution it wants. When your brain gets what it wants, it's your turn to get what you want. So step 4 is align your inner world with your goals. Continuing right where step 3 ends. The brain has gotten what it wants. Now it's time to get you what you want. What do you want from life? What do you want in your relationships, health, finances, and profession? These desires matter. They matter to your emotional wellness. How many people do you know who are emotionally well that are not living out their desires? Step 4 is where we assess each area of your life that is not in alignment with your desires, and we use the skills we learned in steps 1 through 3 to empower your brain to make the changes necessary to achieve what you desire. This step also allows us to take the healing deeper and get rid of even more symptoms. If you aren't living by your desires, then whose are you living by? A life without your fulfilling desires is a life of drudgery. Your brain should constantly be helping you work towards and to experience what you desire. Having the connections, intimacy, experiences, or even physical objects we desire is fulfillment and is, in fact, an expression of the harmony and functionality of our inner world. And we want to resolve any anxiety that shows up to block your desires. Desire alignment examples. I want better teamwork and synergy in my home. I want to finish my music album. I want to get back to my art. I want to spend more time in nature. I want to work less while earning more. I want to start meditating. I want to find my soulmate. I want to bring passion back into my marriage. I want to feel good in my body. I want the pace of my life to slow down. I want to savor the moments with my children. Those are just a few examples. There are so many more, and they all matter. Here's an example of what this step looks like in practice. By this point in the process, your mind is no longer focused on those now resolved symptoms, so it can redirect its energies toward any plans that your anxiety had previously halted. Recall how the woman in step 3 eliminated her morning irritability? Now, with a great start to every morning, she can focus on things she wants to do for the day. So let's say she desires to start working on that book she's been dreaming of writing. She sets out to pursue this desire by writing an hour every morning. But by day 3, she starts to slow down, putting off her writing and instead scrolling through social media. But here's the good news. She recognizes her procrastination and the opportunity to help her brain resolve another symptom at its root. Plus, by this point, she's had a lot of practice. She finds the access point, she resolves the root issue, and with that procrastination out of the way, she's one step closer to her goal. Whatever desire you choose to pursue, we make sure you're able to get there, that your brain is able to help you get there. As you work towards any goal, new and more refined challenges will likely be revealed. But by using the skills you have learned this far, you clear away any new obstacles and realize more and more of your vision for your life. This is a wonderful way to resolve more of the less obvious symptoms of anxiety and get more of what you want in life. And now we're at step 5. Live with your brain, love your brain. More than surviving, living. Up until this point, we've been putting things in working order, like patching up holes in a boat. Now, inspired and ready, we cast off into the river of life. Wherever the river runs, you know you have the skills and experience to tackle the obstacles and navigate the currents along the way. Push through rapids, enjoy still waters, challenge eddies, and take some breaks by the riverbank. Live. To put it another way, picture your inner world as a house. You fixed it up, did some killer redecorating, and now it's time to live in it. Have people over, run around and play, kick your feet up and relax, whatever strikes your fancy. Now and then, a pipe may leak or a floorboard may creak, but by providing your house with the right care and maintenance, you'll find it will continue to support you. Your partnership with your brain is in full bloom, and you are able to provide support and receive it in return, giving you the confidence to live your life. At this point in the process, you are well practiced at supporting your brain to resolve symptoms and create wellness, which is so helpful and empowering, especially as this relationship with your brain grows and becomes richer over time, just like any relationship that is well nurtured. What does this look like? You're able to recognize anxiety and support yourself if it occurs. Your brain is able to anticipate incoming stressors, allowing you to respond accordingly. Stressors are resolved long before they take root and become complex. Your brain is able to direct efforts to thinking of solutions instead of getting stuck in a loop with the survival system. You effectively and skillfully process overwhelming situations. You continually integrate your desires into your inner and outer worlds. Your brain becomes accomplished at understanding and processing experiences. You weed out unnecessary defense mechanisms. You're able to effectively adapt to the constant and sometimes sudden changes that occur in life. Let me give you an example of what this looks like in practice. Imagine you have a relative you haven't spoken to in a while because of an argument you had several years ago. All of a sudden, you receive a text from them saying they want to talk. You don't know if they're still mad. You don't know if you're still mad. You start to notice your mind start to work on this, and your body respond at the prospect of communicating with them. Perhaps the old you would have spiraled into dread, thinking how bad things might be. Perhaps you would have worried or panicked about some yelling or hostile conversation. The new you, however, has learned to support your brain through any difficulties that show up in your life. Now, any anxiety that surfaces lets you know your brain needs some support, and you provide it as needed, helping it through any distress. For instance, applying your skills in this situation, you notice that you recognize other possibilities. You may notice a thought like, it's been a few years. Things may have changed since that argument back then. You could think, do I want to have this conversation? And if I do, what would my desired outcomes be? Instead of being driven by the situation, by the relative, or by the anxiety, you grab the reins yourself. You have skills, you have agency, you have choice, and you can finally use them as you choose. Thanks to working together with your brain, you can access the information and power to decide what's best for you and take the actions required. What living and loving with your brain means is that you go through life, but this time, do it with your brain equipped and in partnership, supporting and being supported by the other in this life of yours. From here on, live with your brain, love your brain. Let's do a quick recap. Step 1, equip yourself with interventions. Step 2, look for your access points. Step 3, get rid of symptoms. Step 4, align your inner world with your goals. And step 5, live with your brain, love your brain. So now you might be wondering, how do I do all of this? These 5 steps seem so simple when laid out, but how exactly do you follow them? Where do you learn these interventions? How do you get started? And that's what I'm here for. As a coach and therapist, I've helped over 200 people through this process and meet their wellness goals by going through these 5 steps. Because of my process and my experience, I consistently help women overcome anxiety in 2 to 6 months instead of 2 to 6 years. And I would be honored to help you overcome anxiety as well. So here's how I can help. I've set aside some time in the next 48 hours to speak to you personally about how you can apply these ideas starting today. Whatever your biggest challenges are, I've seen it, and I know how to overcome it. During this phone call, I will work with you to craft a step-by-step game plan to reach your goal of overcoming anxiety. The cost, absolutely free. Let me tell you who this opportunity is for. I'm extending this opportunity to you if overcoming anxiety is currently one of your highest priorities. You have already developed a moderate to high level of self-awareness. You have a moderate to high functioning support system already in place. You have the personal power to take action. If that's you, book a session now. So why am I doing this? I do this because I love giving back and helping women live and love to their fullest potential. It's time for us to heal. Plus, I know you might want my help to do all the things we discussed in this presentation. If so, we can discuss it and see if it's a good fit for both of us. If not, that's fine too. So book your call now. Go to rachelmcleod.com/call. Or I've made it really simple for you. Just scroll down on this screen and you'll see a red button that says book your call now. Once you click that button, that will take you to my calendar. You'll grab whatever spot works for you, And then you'll be directed to fill out a questionnaire. This helps me understand where you're starting from, what symptoms you want to get rid of, where you want to go in your journey, and a little bit about your wellness goals. This will help prepare you and I to get the most value and create the most impact in our time together. And once that questionnaire is complete, I will call you at the time that you've chosen, and we'll dive in and we'll create a plan to help you overcome anxiety. So those are the steps. Book your call, complete your questionnaire, and I'll call you at the time that you choose. It's simple. That's it. Book your call now by going to rachelmcleod.com/call. I look forward to talking with you, and I'm so glad you joined me on this presentation. Thank you for joining me, and goodbye for now.